Taylor Tooley. UFC 1 takes place on November 12th, 1993 in Denver, where the promotion proudly advertises no rules, no gloves, no time limits. In the opening bout, Gerard Gordeau, a Dutch savate specialist weighing 216 pounds, plants a brutal front kick into the face of 400-pound Hawaiian sumo wrestler Taylor Tooley. The strike instantly blasts one of Tooley's teeth straight out of his mouth and into the crowd, which is less of a souvenir and more of a biohazard. Blood pours as the referee waves it off just 26 seconds into round one, leaving fans both horrified and weirdly impressed. Commentators later joke that Tooley set the record for fastest tooth giveaway in UFC history, though the dental bill wasn't quite as funny. Still, the moment cements the UFC's reputation as something closer to a bar fight on pay-per-view than an organized sport. The chaos of UFC 1 sets the tone, and the next decade only gets stranger before regulation begins with unified rules in 2001. Rich Franklin. At UFC 58 in March 2006, middleweight champion Rich Franklin defends his belt against Canadian challenger David Loiseau in Las Vegas. Early in the first round, Franklin throws a left hand that immediately snaps two bones, leaving him with a broken mitt before most fans had even sat down. Instead of panicking, Franklin keeps punching with the same broken hand for the next 25 minutes, because apparently Ohio math teachers don't believe in excuses. Loiseau absorbs the damage but never mounts real offense, and Franklin cruises to a unanimous decision despite essentially shadowboxing with a splint. The X-rays later confirmed not one, but two fractures, making the win less of a title defense and more of a flex on medical science. Franklin even joked afterward that his biggest mistake was not being ambidextrous. His toughness defines the era, paving the way for Tim Sylvia's infamous arm snap at UFC 48 to remind everyone that bones don't always cooperate. Tim Sylvia. UFC 48 goes down on June 19, 2004 in Las Vegas, where Frank Mir faces Tim Sylvia for the vacant heavyweight championship. Less than a minute into round one, Mir sinks in a deep armbar, and suddenly there's a sickening pop. Sylvia's forearm snaps, plain as day. Herb Dean calls it immediately at 0:50, awarding Mir the belt, while Sylvia loudly protests that he's fine. The medical staff doesn't agree, and X-rays later confirm a clean break of the ulna, which is the medical way of saying, Herb saved your arm. Sylvia had tried to argue that he could keep going, but fighting with a noodle for a forearm isn't exactly what the commission signs off on. He later admitted he couldn't actually feel the arm, which sounds less like toughness and more like denial. The incident underlines the importance of referees stopping fights, and the lesson is reinforced in 2007 when Gabriel Gonzaga flattens Mirko Cro Cop with one of the most replayed knockouts in UFC history. Mirko Cro Cop. UFC 70 takes place on April 21st, 2007 in Manchester, where heavyweight contender Gabriel Gonzaga faces feared Croatian striker Mirko Cro Cop Filipovic. Late in round one, Gonzaga, better known for grappling than striking, plants a right high kick directly on Cro Cop's head, knocking him unconscious instantly. As Cro Cop falls, his right leg folds grotesquely beneath him, and the ankle bends inward in a way that makes every orthopedic surgeon wince. The arena gasps while fans at home try to decide if they should cover their eyes or hit replay. Cro Cop, who built his reputation on ending careers with his own head kicks, suddenly finds himself on the wrong end of his signature move, which is a brutal case of MMA irony. Even Joe Rogan couldn't resist pointing out how surreal it was to see Cro Cop knocked out by his own trademark weapon. The shocking finish sets Gonzaga up for a title shot against Randy Couture at UFC 74, proving one viral knockout can rewrite the heavyweight division overnight. Corey Hill. UFC's Fight for the Troops on December 10, 2008, at Fort Bragg delivers one of the most stomach-turning moments in promotional history. Lightweight Corey Hill, a 6'4" anomaly in the division, throws what looks like a normal outside leg kick against Dale Hart. Instead of hurting Hart, Hill's shin snaps in half like a breadstick, with the tibia bone visibly poking through the skin on live broadcasts. The referee waves it off instantly, while the crowd collectively regrets sitting this close to the cage. The official result is Hart by TKO at 0:20 of round two, though nobody remembers him winning, just Hill's leg making a right angle it shouldn't. Surgery follows with a titanium rod inserted, making Hill technically part cyborg, though not in the cool Terminator way. The moment quickly earns a place in UFC's highlight reels of things you wish you hadn't rewatched twice. Anderson Silva. UFC 162 on July 6, 2013 in Las Vegas marks the end of Anderson Silva's long middleweight reign at 16 straight title defenses. Silva, then 33-4, toys with challenger Chris Weidman by keeping his hands low and clowning mid-exchanges, a trademark that had worked for years. Midway through round 2, Weidman cracks him with a short left hook that lands clean and instantly drops the champion. Silva's head bounces violently off the canvas, and referee Herb Dean steps in at 118, awarding Weidman the TKO. The loss ends Silva's 2,457-day run as champion, the longest title reign in UFC history at that point. Even Joe Rogan, normally excited during knockouts, sounded like someone had just spoiled his birthday surprise. The stunning upset doesn't just dethrone Silva, it reshapes the division and sets up an infamous rematch 6 months later at UFC 168. Alistair Overeem. UFC on ESPN 7 takes place on December 7, 2019 in Washington, D.C., with Alistair Overeem headlining against the undefeated Jairzinho Rozenstruik. For nearly 5 full rounds, Overeem controls the action with takedowns, cage pressure, and ground strikes, looking poised to earn a clear decision win. But with just 4 seconds left in round 5, Rozenstruik steps forward and lands a devastating right-hand square on Overeem's face. The punch splits his upper lip wide open, tearing it almost completely in half and producing one of the most grotesque visuals ever shown on a UFC broadcast. Referee Dan Miragliotta stops the fight at 4:56, awarding Rozenstruik a TKO victory in the final seconds despite him being behind on the scorecards. Overeem immediately requires medical attention and later undergoes plastic surgery with dozens of stitches to repair the torn lip. Photos of the injury quickly go viral as the slow-motion replay shows his lip literally flapping as he falls back. Even Dana White called it the worst lip I've ever seen, which, considering the UFC's history of blood and broken bones, is saying a lot. The injury doesn't just rob Overeem of a win, it becomes a career-defining moment for Rozenstruik, who proves that one punch in the closing seconds can erase an entire fight's worth of control. Antonio Nogueira. UFC 140 on December 10, 2011 in Toronto matches Antonio Rodrigo Big Nog Nogueira against Frank Mir in a heavyweight rematch. Nogueira rocks Mir on the feet and goes for the kill, but Mir flips the script, takes him down, and cranks a Kimura with all the subtlety of a carjack. Big Nog refuses to tap, because apparently career pride is stronger than ligaments, until his shoulder and humerus snap loud enough to make the front row rethink their ticket purchase. The fight ends at 3:38 of round 1 by technical submission, marking the first time in his career Nogueira has been forced to tap or break. The crowd sits frozen while Mir calmly celebrates like he just solved a Sudoku puzzle, not dislocated a legend's arm. Mir later admitted he felt the pop before the referee even intervened, which is both horrifying and weirdly braggy. Rory MacDonald. UFC 189 on July 11, 2015, in Las Vegas becomes an instant classic when Robbie Lawler defends his welterweight title against Rory MacDonald. Through 4 rounds, both fighters trade momentum, with MacDonald nearly finishing Lawler with head kicks and flurries late in round 3 and round 4. But by the final round, MacDonald's nose is already broken, swollen, and leaking, the kind of injury that makes every slow-motion replay look worse than the last. Lawler lands a clean left hand early in round 5, and MacDonald collapses from the accumulated punishment, forcing the referee to stop it at 1 o'clock by TKO. The image of both men staring each other down between rounds, Lawler's lips split wide open and MacDonald's face covered in blood, is still one of the UFC's most replayed freeze frames. Joe Rogan summed it up best when he said MacDonald's nose exploded, which is about as close to medical commentary as he gets. The fight wins Fight of the Year honors, but it also shortens careers, reminding everyone that sometimes the cost of a classic is a broken face. Caleb Starnes. UFC 64 on October 14th, 2006 in Las Vegas matches Caleb Starnes against Yushin Okami on the undercard. In round 3, Okami lands a clean knee to the head that instantly rips open a long gash down the center of Starnes' forehead. Blood pours so heavily that the canvas starts looking like a paint project gone wrong, and even Herb Dean admits afterward he got some in his eyes while trying to referee. The cage-side doctor waves it off at 1:40 of round 3, giving Okami a TKO victory while Starnes is sent off for stitches, 20 of them to be exact. The fight itself wasn't particularly memorable, but the cut was so gruesome that fans still bring it up whenever worst UFC bloodbaths are discussed. It's one of the few times where the post-fight interview could have been replaced with a mop and a bucket. The messy finish highlights how fast a doctor can stop a bout. Chris Weidman, UFC 261 on April 24th, 2021, in Jacksonville puts Chris Weidman against Uriah Hall, and the fight lasts just 17 seconds, but not for the reason anyone expected. Weidman opens with the very first strike, a low leg kick, and it immediately snaps against Hall's shin, breaking his tibia clean in half. The injury is almost identical to Anderson Silva's leg break in 2013, except this time it happens to Weidman, the same man who had checked Silva's kick back then. He collapses screaming, his leg dangling at an angle no human joint is supposed to manage, and referee Herb Dean waves it off instantly. Hall, visibly shaken, doesn't even celebrate as he's announced the winner by TKO. The crowd, back in full force after pandemic restrictions, groans louder with each slow-motion replay as the broadcast shows it from every possible angle, whether people wanted it or not. Dana White later admitted it was the worst injury he'd ever seen cage-side, which is saying something, considering this is the same guy who's watched hundreds of dudes get choked unconscious. The freak accident keeps Weidman out of action for over 2 years, and it remains one of the most infamous blink and it's broken moments in UFC history. Tony Ferguson, UFC 249. On May 9th, 2020, in Jacksonville sees Tony Ferguson, riding a 12-fight win streak, face Justin Gaethje for the interim lightweight belt. Gaethje puts on the performance of his career, landing 143 significant strikes over 5 rounds, with most of them bouncing off Ferguson's chin like a heavy bag that forgot to move. By round 5, Ferguson's orbital bone is fractured, his face is swollen beyond recognition, and yet he's still upright, occasionally smiling and shaking his head like he just got hit with a Nerf ball. Herb Dean mercifully stops it at 3:39 of the 5th round, giving Gaethje the TKO win and handing Ferguson his first loss in 8 years. The result doesn't just end his streak, it also derails his long-awaited title shot against Khabib Nurmagomedov once and for all. Even Gaethje admitted he was shocked Ferguson didn't go down sooner, calling him a zombie with a chin made of steel. The beating is remembered less as a comeback opportunity and more as the night Ferguson's durability finally backfired on him. Conor McGregor, UFC 264 on July 10th, 2021 in Las Vegas hosts the trilogy between Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier, and it ends in chaos rather than closure. After a competitive first round full of wild exchanges and even a guillotine attempt from McGregor, he plants his foot awkwardly and his ankle snaps right at the horn. The round ends with McGregor sitting against the cage, screaming for the doctor while his leg dangles, and Herb Dean waves it off before round 2 can even begin. The fight is officially recorded as a TKO doctor stoppage for Poirier at 5 minutes of round 1, but McGregor, never missing a microphone opportunity, immediately launches into a post-fight promo while flat on the canvas. He insists Poirier's win is illegitimate, which is a bold claim when your tibia is pointing sideways. The injury sidelines him indefinitely, leaving fans debating less about who won the trilogy and more about whether McGregor's return timeline belongs in years or decades. If you enjoyed this, I'm going to be posting a lot here. I would greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thanks for watching.